nothing else was going on, just sat back and watching this movie. A European fellow had come to the South Pacific, to one of those volcanic islands, and met the people there, and over time develops an attachment to one of the young ladies. Well, the movie continues, and there are troubles with the volcanoes, and questions being asked among the people, what do we do? And his wife, who'd been running some errands, came back and said, oh, I've seen that movie. She jumps in the volcano. Well, the idea was a human sacrifice would appease the volcano god. I mean, that was the plot line, and that's exactly what happens. And that became a joke amongst them about what's going to happen in that movie. They all jump in a volcano, no matter what. It just became a standard joke. So I want to go ahead and say a little bit today about the whole story of Ruth. She doesn't jump into a volcano, don't worry. This story will end well. Some of you are familiar with it. For some, this may be something you've heard about but do not know in depth. The story has a lot of tension as we see what's going to happen next. So I want you to walk with me through this story over the next several weeks. No, she will not jump into the volcano, though it may seem like it at certain points. The story begins with Elimelech and his wife and their 2 sons, and they live in the village of Bethlehem, which happens to mean house of bread. And very ironic that in the house of bread, there is a famine. And so they go to live elsewhere. They go to the land of Moab, about 50 miles away. It was a land of a higher elevation, and did some more reading on this. The rain patterns actually got more rainfall. And so even though it was only 50 miles away, it was a good place to stay. A friend of mine once served a church in North Scotland County, North Carolina. And he said, I was talking with him, he said, we've had a really hard summer for rain. Some parts of southern Scotland County have gotten some rain, nothing on my end of the county. But the statistics are counted for the whole county, and so officially we're not in even a drought, though we are in the northern end. Just a few miles can make a difference. Well, they go off to this new place to live, and apparently they do well. They reinvent themselves. They see something good that is there. The sons marry, and 10 years have passed, and that's usually the signal that children should have come about by now, but no children have come about. Well, the husband has died, but Naomi's got her two sons and their wives, but they haven't had any children, and then both sons die without heirs. Well, now Naomi is very vulnerable. She is at a very desperate place. She is a foreigner in a foreign land. She has no rights there. There is no husband, no male to protect her, to defend her. No husband, no son, no heirs. It suggests here that she has no other immediate family, no father or brothers, and that's confirmed later in the story. And so she returns to her homeland. She returns to Bethlehem. Maybe there's somewhere in the network that she can find some help. She tells both daughters-in-law, you're here among your people. Go back to your people. Maybe there's a young widower out there who needs someone to help raise the children. Could get married that way. There's still some hope for them for marriage and children. And Orpah, after discussion, says, okay, I will do that. Ruth says, I will go with you. Your God will be my God. Your people, my people. And so she goes. And this is one of the bright spots early in this story. And they return, and they have been gone for, Naomi at least has been gone for 10 years at least. Probably a few more. And there are people who remember her and greet her. And Naomi means pleasant. And she says, no, do not call me Naomi. Don't call me pleasant. Our scripture says, why? Why are you calling me that? Call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has dealt harshly with me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? She is mad. She is angry. She is sharing her hurt and frustration. How many of you have had a Naomi experience, or someone close to you has had one? Elimelech and Naomi faced a setback and they reinvented themselves. In fact, it's even suggested in the way the story is set up that they were well-to-do in Bethlehem. And they had to leave. In a way suggesting the Vanderbilts had to give up Biltmore House and go live in a sharecropper's shack. They've gone to this foreign land where they have no rights, but they've been able to build a life there. The sons have married. They have done well. I like to listen to this podcast, Wise About Texas. It's a judge, his last name is Wise, based out of Houston, and he does stories on the history of Texas. And one time he was interviewing this man. He was the park ranger, chief park ranger for one of the state parks, a very important battle site. And so it's kind of interesting, you're not from Texas, and yet you've got this position, sort of keeper of the shrine. And he said, yes, but I came here, there was a good opportunity, I made a much better life for myself here. I'm sure this was set up because then the judge said, well, that makes you a Texan, because you came here to make something of yourself. You got knocked back, basically, and you came here and you're doing well. That makes you a Texan. That's the story of Texas. So there they've gone to reinvent themselves. And maybe they even expected that. I have a sense that there's like life has mulligans. You kind of get one setback, that's when you get a mulligan to hit the reset button. Now in golf, there's only one mulligan. Or at least supposed to be. But there really is no guarantee that you only have to worry about using your mulligan once. They have been there, and along the way, no children, and enough years have passed that something should have happened. But she has her two sons, her heir and despair, and she loses them both. The bottom has fallen out. Maybe in the back of your mind, you're thinking, yes, I had this big loss, we negotiated it, but then it was happily ever after. Or thinking that's the way it should be. A one and done when it comes to setbacks. But Naomi has the triple whammy. And then she returns, and the people see her and recognize her. And how have you done? In a way, it's like a high school reunion. And I did not get to attend my earliest ones. The first one was a 20th, but I've gone back to the ones since then. And I've enjoyed them. And there is, of course, a little bit of comparison along the way. How are you doing? How's life been treating you since the last one? And conversation among UNC alum friends and seminary friends. How has it been going? What are you doing? I recently posted a picture from seminary days, and one of the fellows saying, hey, are we all still in the game? Those of us in this picture. She goes back, but no, there's nothing to show for it. It's kind of we left poor, and I came back poor. Never mind the 10 years in between. And maybe you have been in such a place like that. Maybe as I speak, you're thinking about setbacks that you have faced, job situations that did not work out like you hoped they would, moves that were not promising, financial challenges that you have faced again and again. And we have these words of Naomi. And these words give permission. Scripture gives permission to share our laments, to share our hurts. Our first lesson was Psalm 22, the words that Jesus uttered on the cross. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? There are several psalms that speak of the situations, grieving a setback. And that was the hymn book of the people, the hymn book of Jesus. Not all of the psalms are rah-rah, sis boom bah. There are losses that we have faced. And I think of the losses people are experiencing now in Coronaville. I think of the class of 2020. They'll always be known as the Corona class. Weddings that have been scaled way back and recorded for others to watch. Birthdays that have not been celebrated as originally planned. Trips have been postponed. Loved ones have passed away. And people either watch the service online or something will happen later. Businesses have closed and not sure what is next. Incomes have taken hits in many cases. Will they come back? Recent events in our country have raised points of pain and frustration, having many people wondering, can we even have a conversation these days? And you ought to see the jokes that are out there about what can happen next. Don't ask. I think there's a meteor supposed to be on the way to the earth or close to the earth. And again, just one joke after another. What else can happen? Don't ask about 2020. These verses give us permission to grieve and complain and whine and get angry about our own situation. Now, there's a danger if we stay too long at a point of grief or if we leave too soon. Think of a story shared. A couple had moved to a neighborhood, and the lady in the house was out in the backyard one day and saw across the fence her next door neighbor and struck up a conversation. And the neighbor shared a horrible story of betrayal. Husband had left her for the best friend. And she shared in incredible detail all that had happened. And this new person in the neighborhood thought, gosh, that's terrible. When did that happen? 20 years ago. But she was stuck at that point. So we don't want to do that. However, there's also a danger to leave too soon, to get to the good news too soon. At times, but particularly in this modern, like the last 30 years era, the church has been criticized, critiqued for getting too quickly to the happy. Some churches will have a Palm Sunday service and an Easter service, one triumph after another. I think the good thing about this church is that we have Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday in between. And some of you come to one service, and some of you come to the other, and some of you come to both, to know that between the palms of Palm Sunday and the flowers of Easter Sunday, there is a cross, and there is time spent in the grave. Today, let these words of Scripture give you permission to grieve and to be angry and to lament. And if you hear Naomi say, the Lord has dealt bitterly with me, and you want to say, you go, girl, go right ahead. However, there is a nugget of hope. At the end of the chapter, it speaks that the barley harvest is taking place. So if you know the whole story, you know something is about to happen. So today, don't leave you a complete downer, but saying it is okay to grieve, and we have words of Scripture that let you grieve. But remember, it doesn't have the final word. As you lament, remember there is more to the story. Thanks be to God. And we'll tune in next week.